This one here is just a quick review on drawing ellipses in perspective. One of the common problems with ellipses is just being able to physically draw them so that they look correct. So some of the common errors is that an ellipse looks too circular or too flat. What we want is something in between. And the easiest way to do that is to ghost the image. So before you actually draw the ellipse, you're ghosting it with your pencil and you're trying not to get it unconnected like that one. So just erase those. So again, the technique I use is in my mind's eye. I'm looking at my pencil and going fast enough that I can see the ellipse, and I'm also resting my fingers on the page like that. So I'm not trying to do it in the air. I'm actually touching a bit of paper and ghosting. Again, the speed that you do it helps a little bit, but I find about that speed seems to work the best. So as you get the mind's eye, and then you just slowly push your pen down onto the page and you'll get the ellipse like that. Take your time. There you have an ellipse that's approximately what you need. The next thing to know about ellipses is that they only can be drawn in perspective on 3 different positions, and those positions relate to the axis. So when we talk about the axis for ellipses, an ellipse, I'll just quickly draw my ellipse, an ellipse has what's called a short axis and also a long axis that way. So short axis is the shortest distance through the ellipse. This way we don't have to worry about the long axis because it's not important to us. This short axis is where one of these 3 axes lines goes through. So it doesn't matter how I draw my ellipse, all that matters is that it must go through the short axis, through one of those axis lines. So short axis, short axis, short axis, through the short axis. You can do it on the bottom there, but they cannot go in between. So if you draw an ellipse and your short axis ends up going through that way, it's going to look out of perspective. So just to bring that into the realm of how that works, if I were to draw a perspective box and I wanted to drill some holes in it, I've got to work out which of my 3 axes I use to drill. So 3 axis space, 3 axes, 3 axes. And I've got to work out, we use the analogy of putting a hole in a box in the direction the drill would come from. So in this case, using my 3 axes, I'm going to put a hole in that face. So the drill, I've only got a choice of 3, so the drill could either come that way, or that way. Of course the drill comes through to drill the hole in that way. Same thing with this one, the drill would have to come that way. This one, the drill would have to come that way. You can try it if you like. You think, oh, if I put it that way, drill coming that way is going to miss the surface of the material. The drill coming that way is going to hit the surface of the material. But if it came that way, it's going to miss it. So that's what we talk about, the short axis. Now the next thing to do is I always do a little test. So I quickly draw my ellipse. So it's going through a short axis, just to check. And then I just magnify that on the surface of my object. So just ghost it. There's the short axis line going through that ellipse. Same thing here, I'm going to ghost it again. And this one here, yeah, that's the way it's got to go. That's the shape of my ellipse. So, same thing. And that way, we make our object look like it's got holes in it. That one there's a bit fat. And I can also do the same thing again to add the appearance of thickness. So it's still another ellipse, but we're only showing half of it. Same thing here on our ellipse. It shows the thickness when we start lining it in. If we were to do it incorrectly, you start to see straight away how, if I didn't follow the short axis line, I put my short axis line this way and did the same thing, ellipse through the short axis line, and drew my ellipse like that, it looks out of perspective. And the same thing here, I exaggerate it. If here's my short axis line, and I put my short axis line driving through that, and drew the ellipse through the short axis line, it looks incorrect and twisted. And then of course we can exaggerate that by, if I were to draw my ellipse coming out the same way, the same ellipse there, this object looks like the cone on the top is twisted, as opposed to if I had have drawn it correctly with my short axis line, it looks like it's way more in perspective. It doesn't look twisted. Same thing with this one. That one's incorrect. Let's redrew up 3 axes of space. Here's my short axis line. So therefore that's what the ellipse is to look like. Go stretch, extend. Do the same thing again. Now my object looks a little bit more realistic. It doesn't take much to muck it up too. I only need to go off a little bit like that. And my object will start to look distorted. So just a little recap. 3 axes of space. Ellipse goes through the short axis. There's the short axis. Short axis. Short axis of the ellipse. And then it will look like it's in perspective.